Sons of Kryos.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Judd.
And we are
the Sons of Kryos. And our show is about play.
And everything that happens at the gaming table.
Sometimes we will venture under the gaming table.
Sometimes we'll go to the fridge.
Or the bookshelf.
And sometimes we'll go to the computer.
But we're always going to try to keep our show centered around that game table. That's our home. That's what the show is about. That's what interests us.
This is Malcolm Craig from Contested Studios, and you're listening to Sons of Kryos. And if you're not listening to it, what are you doing in my house?
Hi everybody, and welcome to the 16th show of the Sons of Kryos.
My goodness. How did we get here? 16.
Yeah, man. That's quite a bit.
Yeah, it's nice. We're getting there.
Did you think we would make it this far? Well, we were supposed to have a party at show like 10.
10, no party.
And we didn't have a party.
We're like old fuddy-duddies. We don't have parties.
Maybe it's show 20.
And when we do have parties, the cops don't come anymore. What's up with that? Remember those parties? Where there was like tears and blood and cops? Those are fun parties.
I do remember those parties. Most of them anyways.
I'm having a midlife crisis on the air. Don't mind me.
Are you going to buy a convertible?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that's the way I'm going. I don't think that's the route I'm going to go.
That's
we've got a good show for you today, I think. We've got game notes. We're going to talk about different reasons, different things to do with your game notes.
We're going to talk about emails that people have sent us, things that people have said on our forum, questions they've had. We're calling this segment Scale Mail.
Oh, I like that. It's like in the comic books, whenever they have a mail column, they always give it some special cute little name that's a pun, and ours is a pun on Kryos.
Yeah.
So that's good, very good. And then our third little tidbit is about scene framing, which was a question that someone asked us.
And since I'm a carpenter, and framing, and it all kind of works in there. You're going to need a few power tools for this, some hammer, nails, saw,
but nothing you won't be able to find around the house, and that is not absolutely D20 compliant.
All right, shall we move on to game notes, Judd?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. So, tell me, what's the game notes segment here? What do we?
Well, I think when you take game notes, you have to do it for a certain purpose, and this is not notes that you go into a game with. These are notes that you come out of a game with.
Notes that you come out of a game with.
Yes.
Okay.
So, why are you taking the notes? Do you want it for plot reasons, so you can remember what happened? Do you want to remember different NPCs' names who you had to make up during the course of the game?
Because let me tell you, that is a pain in the butt remembering who you created on the fly later on.
I very often will ask players to especially when one player was missing, I will ask the players to fill them in on what happened, and that's a great way for me to just catch up and not only realize what's going on in the game and remember things that maybe I didn't remember so clearly, but I get to see what really affected the players and what they remember. So that's nice. But that's when your notes aren't so good. So two main reasons why I take play notes. Mm-hmm. I do it to write an actual play post, either on rpg.net on the Forge.
Now, what is an actual play post, Judd?
That is a very good question, Jeff. So there are two types of posts that you can make. Well, not two types, but two types of post-game posts that you can make on a forum. There's actual play, and there's story hour. And they're very different, and they have very different goals. An actual play post is there to say what happened at the table between the people who are playing. So you want to know, like, a couple of good things that happened, something that didn't work so well. I like to go in with an agenda. This didn't work. I want to talk about why it didn't work, and maybe someone else can share their wisdom. And if something did work great, and if a game did work really well, I want to go out and talk about that too. But when I just have a medium well game night, maybe I don't do it so much.
Right.
So I'm really careful about when I post and where at this point. A story hour post is very, very different. A story hour post is when you want to write a short story based on your game. Lots of people do that. That's mostly that. It happens on RPG.net too.
Now, does this touch on the players at all, or is this just the characters?
This is just for Story Hour. Very often, it's just the characters. In what I've seen, sometimes the GM will start a different thread,
right?
And there are some. And on N-World, there's an entire forum dedicated to this. And there's one in particular that's a high-level D&D forum by someone who posts under the name, it starts with SEP, Sepulcrave, maybe? Anyway, it's brilliant. It's high-level D&D, his game written out as a short story, and it's absolutely fantastic. I'll have a link to it off of this show.
I'm going to have to take a look at that.
Yeah, it's really fun. I sent it to a friend of mine who was running a high-level D&D game, and he was just a little bit worried about how the magic was going to work.
Right.
And I thought this guy really had a neat take on how magic worked in high-level D&D. Very fun stuff. But they're very different things. One is, you're writing a short story, and the other is you're writing, hey, this is what, you're kind of writing so that other gamers, and maybe the game designer who made the game, will know how the game worked out in the field.
Right.
So one is very very cut and dry, which is not to say that an actual play post can't be entertaining. I think it can be. But, I mean, a story hour post, you're writing a short story. I did a extended story hour post when I wrote a game that JJ and I played together. It was mostly just me and JJ on when he was laid up in bed after a car accident, and I wrote a long story hour based on our midnight game.
Yeah.
Now, one little tiddly bit thing that I like to do when I write a story hour is I don't like to say what the players were thinking, which makes it very difficult to write a short story. So like when it was just me and JJ knew that, I liked writing about what was happening in our game, he would give me notes on what his character was thinking. And that was cool because I don't like to, what they call deprotagonize a player, which is take away their ability to affect the plot or take away their
control,
their role as a protagonist in the story
by
me putting on them what I think it should be through a short story. If I'm going to do a story hour based on a game, I tell people up front, hey, do you guys mind if I write this up? This was a lot of fun. Same thing with an actual play post. I like to get people's opinion, particularly if I'm going to mention names.
Let's talk a little bit about what type of things that you write down in your notes.
In my game notes, yeah.
Yeah.
I like to.
So we touched on NPCs that you create,
NPC names,
stuff like that.
I like to. If you really want to keep a good log of the game and know where it went, write down every time someone rolls the dice.
Really?
That will give you, if you're using the system a lot, that will give you a blueprint of where that game went and where and why.
Now, what do you mean every time they roll the dice? You mean
every time there's a conflict?
I'm assuming you don't mean write down like, oh, they rolled a 12.
No.
I'm assuming you mean like the guts of what is happening in that scene.
Absolutely. A search roll failed. Search roll for, MacGuffin failed. And then you can look at the game and you can, if you write the notes well enough, you can get a really nice outline of where the game went.
Now, I think this probably takes a little bit of getting used to. I know that I do it. I personally take notes for my games, but I can't. It distracts me if I try and do it too much.
Right.
And I know that my players, the game, will suffer for the distraction.
Yes.
So
I think if you've got to choose between, game notes or the game, you always choose the game.
Well, yes, absolutely. And to be honest, that's one of the reasons why I choose to record most of my game sessions with a little iPod iTalk recorder, because if and it's not that I go back and listen to every single game that I play, because that just takes way too long.
Oh yeah.
But once in a while, I'll be able to say, hey, something really important happened back there. Let me go back, listen to that specific scene, and I'll pull out a notepad and then I'll write down the stuff in my actual notes that I want to pay attention to.
Recording it is really a great way to do it. I mean, because it doesn't take away from your concentration.
Right.
All of this is stuff that I do if it's a small game and I don't have to, and I have time to do this, if the pacing allows. If the game starts to pick up or I feel like I'm not giving it my full concentration because of the notes, I just ditch the notes and I'll come back to it later. The other way that I've taken notes in the past is I don't write anything during the game other than what I definitely need.
Right.
And right after the game, I take a half hour to myself and I sit down and I reflect and think about it. And that can be very useful for taking your game notes and then using them for interesting, dramatic stuff that's going to fall into the next game.
Right.
And I really like doing that. Taking about a half hour to 45 minutes, thinking about the game, writing down some things that occur to me, and just making that, and that is, there I go. I mean, that piece of paper will be my next game's notes going in.
Now, since we're talking about notes that happen or really are about what happens after the game, what do you think about post-game write-ups from your players?
Because, I love that. I think that's great.
Yeah, I use that and some of my players. It's not really easy to get people to do that all the time, you know, and I certainly don't expect it all the time. But I find that getting that perspective, like you were saying with JJ and his notes about his character's feelings, that gives you a really good perspective on what they were seeing.
Absolutely. And it also, I mean, when I write up an AP post or an actual play post and a story hour post, I send that link to my players. Hopefully they can, go chime in and say, hey, absolutely, this part was really great, or this part wasn't working for me so much, and that's important. That kind of feedback is really important. I mean, in a perfect world, the actual play post would have input from everyone in the group, but not everybody is inclined, and not everybody does or can. So that's fine.
Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, there's so much like gaming stuff that I'm involved with. And I know that when I am a player, I know that for me, I'm lagging in that aspect.
Right.
And it's tough to keep everything all on the same page as far as like what games are doing what and what characters doing what. So a lot of times I don't chime in as much as I should. But
no, I think you've been fine when you've chimed in APs in the past. I don't think it's been a problem.
But I realize that it's very helpful,
right,
to the person running the game, because in even like when you're talking about plot lines, things that you want to do in your game, and when players mention things that interest them, that's some of the best times to get information about what your players want. When they go, oh well, maybe the thing behind the door is this,
right? And
then you're like, wow, that was a really cool idea. That's better than mine. I'm going to use that,
right? Or incorporate it somehow. Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a great. It is right after the game is a really valuable time. If you can pay attention to your gamers when they go to the diner, or when they get together and hang out on the porch after the game, or in the parking lot, or wherever they hang out. That's a really valuable time, especially if it was a hot game and people are excited.
One of the people that called in on our call-in show, we actually spoke to them about this specifically.
We absolutely
did.
Yeah.
We haven't done the call-in show yet, but for those of you who are interested, we're setting up times where you can call us, and we'll talk to you about your gaming issues.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's game notes. I think that's pretty much what I've got.
Great.
Sounds good.
This show is a member of Goblin, the gaming broadcast network. gbncom.com.
Next up is Scale Mail, which is from our emails and from the forum posts. When you email us at sonsofkryos@yahoo.com, it is usually me who replies, for I am the secretary of Kryos.
We love feedback.
And we do love our feedback. And we get a lot of it. It's really nice. We've gotten feedback from Portugal and Finland and
all over the world, man.
New Jersey. Just crazy places.
Really? Even New Jersey?
I think so. I didn't know they had email in New Jersey. I was born and raised in New Jersey, so don't get upset there, Garden Staters. So let's go to our first letter. Our first letter is from Jason, who just recently came onto the Forge as Jason13 or Jason13. And he writes us, I have had an idea for a segment on your show. Ah, thank you, Jason. I wonder if you could let us all know about your opinions on playing music at the table. Do you play music? What kind? Sometimes I play music, and in a game I ran a couple of years ago, one of the rituals for the start of the game was the playing of an intro song by the Manic Street Preachers, which was the cue that the week's episode was about to begin. Also in that game, every PC had a signature tune or song of the player's choosing, which was played in the background at times of tension and drama.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's
I like
neat.
that.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's a great idea.
I think it would. That requires a bit of setup. Really cool. I don't know if I would really be able to keep track of that while I was running a game.
Right.
Just because it's like, all right, here's a cool scene coming up. Oh wait, gotta hit the play button.
Right.
But I really like that. I think it's really cool. And if you could set that up and juggle it, then yeehaw.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to do a Primetime Adventures game entirely starting with the theme song. So you have nothing else. Everybody just brings a bunch of theme songs, and that's how you start. And everybody picks a song, and then they decide what that show is about. That plays that song at the beginning every week.
I wonder how many people will pick the Firefly theme song.
Oh man. But that's a really good example of I mean, when you watch Firefly, you know you're watching it. I mean, it really is a little ritual for that song coming on and either enduring your way through it or enjoying it.
Or crying.
Singing while weeping.
I have used music in my games before.
Have you? How so?
Yeah, kind of a background music type of, just set the mood. Usually it's been with a vampire game where I've done kind of like the goth, like heavy metal type of typo negative music.
Right.
Or maybe some classical music.
I don't know if you can call typo negative heavy metal.
Well,
that's another show. It's a different show, a different podcast. What am I doing? I'm in the wrong house. Go on, I'm sorry.
Judd, do you use music in your games?
No, go on. You should.
Yeah, I'm done. You derailed me, dude.
All right, I've got one really, really good music story. I was about 16 or maybe 15, and I was running Ravenloft for the first time, and I was very excited. And I got a tape from a friend of my mother's of Toccata and Fugue in B minor or D minor. I don't remember which because I don't play music, and it all is Crazy Moon Talk to me. So, and that's the one that goes dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun,
right.
So the tape had this long delay. Like when you pushed play, it just spun for a while and it didn't play. So I pushed play, and we're kind of going through the adventure. And one of the players, like the players, like sleep in this barn because they couldn't get a room at a local inn. And the mists roll in, and one of the players sends out his like raven familiar to go, like, what's going on? I hear weird noises outside. And the raven flies out and comes back, and he says, we're not in the same world, we're not in the same place, it's not where we went to sleep, this isn't the same place, I don't know what's going on. Da-na-na, da-na-na-na-na. And everybody just applauded because they thought I had planned that, and I absolutely hadn't. It was total serendipity and total luck, but it was very, very cool.
That is great. We had to talk about that sometime. And I think it comes in for me more with like LARPing, but with setting up certain things and how sometimes luck really does just come into your game and do some really amazing stuff.
Absolutely. That was definitely a case of luck. It was very cool. It didn't and that kind of music, that kind of baroque ridiculous music was fun for that game. It was really nice. So I like background music sometimes. It can be, especially, I think you have to make sure the group is cool with it because it can take away from the game for some people.
It can be distracting.
It can absolutely be distracting. I know there was a couple times when I gamed with the group in Jersey, and one of the players really liked having music playing, and the others just didn't, and it just became an issue.
I had the same issue with a player and a TV.
Oh no, TV is way no.
It was completely over the edge.
Oh man.
But background music is, I really enjoy it when I'm running a game where I think it fits the mood, and I'm a bit picky about the music too. So I've got to really kind of know what I'm looking for that particular game night. And
in Octane, you actually, according to the rules, you have to be playing music.
You
which
do.
Is very cool. I mean, when I ran Octane once, we did have the Johnny Cash and some good yeehaw rock going in the background. So that was fun.
When I ran it relatively recently, we had music playing. It was some sort of like heavy metal from some satellite dish network, whatever. But it worked. And
I think a cool thing about having iPods now is you could probably have just like your campaign music file, where you just kept one file with all your campaign music and you just played that in a mix when you gamed.
That's a good idea.
That's doable. I don't even have an iPod.
I may have to try that.
I like to fantasize that I do. And when I do, these are the type of things that I think of.
Do you want me to make you like a little fake iPod? You can carry it around and like pretend that you have one?
That's almost... That's more pathetic than not having one. I'll walk around with my big CD player and look like an antique. That's all right. So, Jason, thank you very much for writing us. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Our next letter
is from Storn.
Storn A. Cook.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for writing us, Storn.
Jeff, do you want to read this one?
Yeah, if you want to.
All right. Storn writes, when faced with a player who is freezing up in the spotlight, what questions do you trot out to get them thinking and to get them to give out a kicker?
I would ask them what if this character was in a movie, what would be the first scene of the movie? If this picture the moment, the very moment where this character's life changes forever. Bam! Now, you've recently tried to invoke kickers into a traditional game that you ran. So how did kickers go over, and what did you have to do to coax people out?
Well, boy, let me answer like what I would say to his question first, and then I'll talk about yours.
Yeah.
For his, I think I would start by talking to the player about the character and like the background for it, and kind of what the picture is that they're seeing of the character. So it's similar to yours,
right?
But more of a what exactly are you going for here?
Right.
So, but as far as my own game, I really have to just pull out everything in my arsenal. I talk to them about their character history. I talk to them about what their goals are. What inspires them. I look at their character sheet, what skills they have, and really just try and I don't know. I need to be an empath so I can figure out what it is that they're asking. What they want to see.
It can be difficult. Another thing I think I would say is picture the one scene you really want this whole game to have. Picture the penultimate scene. Let's start there.
Right.
And then let's make the game go in some crazy direction from there. So let's think of that one crazy, amazing start. And let's go from that moment. And see, players might get really dramatic on that.
I think every player, when they come up with a character, usually has an image in their head of what they're seeing.
Right.
And if you can get them to describe that image to you, I think it's a good start of trying to figure out what it is that really what they dig and what they're looking for. So cool.
Good question, Storn. Thank you very much for writing.
Yeah, thank you.
And Blake writes us. He wrote us a whole bunch, but we're only going to use a couple of his questions. So thank you very much, Blake, for writing. And one of his questions is varying GM/player voice, third person versus first person, etc. And then he goes on to write, how divested can a player be from his character while still offering up a satisfying portrayal / receiving a satisfying play experience? Indeed. There's a lot mixed into this.
That one.
So let me answer the one part that I think is really easy to answer first. Third person versus first person. So a player who says, I open the door, and a player who says, he opens the door. As if his character is is a character in a book. There is no difference. It does not matter. I just don't think it does. I think both people who say those types of things, you can interchange them, you can go back and forth, and it just doesn't make a difference.
Now, let me speak up here, Judd, because I think it could make a difference, actually. Okay. I don't think it makes a big difference in the play of what happens with the character, but I think that it's a hint as to what style of game that the player is into.
That's a good point.
For example, Primetime Adventures,
right?
Where you're talking about a TV show that you're doing. You're not really necessarily playing your character as much as you're creating a cool TV show. So I think that this has come up recently in some games that I've played in, actually.
Right.
At Get Your Geek On-a-thon, actually.
Yeah.
And I think that this is exactly what came out there.
Right.
And I think if you have a bunch of people who are, one way and somebody that's another way, I don't think they mesh very well all the time.
It depends. I mean, it depends. People can go from third to first person, and it cannot mean very much.
Right.
It can just mean they're playing the same type of game with the same level of immersion and the same authorship.
Absolutely.
But yes, I mean, it can be indicative of something far, far greater and a much bigger difference. The whole
Because some players are immersionists, I guess would be a term for that.
It's a discussion that's going on. I don't want to label people whatever. So it's a discussion that's going on at RPG.net very often with people who play for immersion and people who don't. And
well, good, because I haven't read any of that, so this is wonderful.
Yeah, well, I try not to read it. It's like a sore tooth. I can't stop playing with it. But it's... Yes, I would imagine that someone who is hardcore in no immersion might want to go into... I don't know, because I am definitely someone who immerses in their character, but I like different things than the people who call themselves immersionists on RPG.net like in my game. My tastes are just different. So I don't really want to speak for them, and I don't know what to say.
All right. Shall we move on to the rest of the question here?
Yeah. How divested can a player be from his character while still offering up a satisfying portrayal / receiving a satisfying play experience?
I think that... I think it depends completely on the player.
It depends on the player in the game.
Because I know some people who are, just very separated from their character.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they can do, awesome things with nearly anything that they play.
Right.
And then I know some people that if they're not like really into the character and feeling it and, understand the act, in the boots of it, that they just can't get it. They can't do it.
Right.
And I really think that comes down to the player.
Yep. I'm sorry, Blake. We just gave you a really, really limp kind of answer to those, but you've brought up interesting points that hopefully we will touch on again. I think you've sparked some thought in me and Jeff, and we will be thinking about that. We'll come back to it, I think.
All right. Blake's next question is, how do you involve the more passive players while not discouraging the more inclined?
Jeff, you've mentioned that this is happening at your table, so do you want to talk about it, or do you want...
Yeah, I think that I've had in games that I've run and participated in a number of people, I don't want to say it's a lot, but I've definitely seen people at those tables that just aren't getting into it.
Right.
And maybe they just kind of want to hang out with the rest of the group, and they're kind of along for the ride,
right?
Or maybe they're just not feeling it that night,
right.
I don't know for sure. And usually when I see something like that, I will notice it and I'll kind of give them a session to see if they snap out of it, if it was just they were tired or whatever.
Right.
And then if it goes on for more than that, then I will usually talk to them, pull them aside later on, meet with them and say, hey, look, are you feeling this? Are you having fun?
Right.
And we've talked about this before, that if you're not having fun in your game, then really, I don't want to say that you should kick them out,
but they should be doing something else with their time. Maybe.
Yeah, they should be having a good time.
Right.
And if they're not, there's only so much you can do.
Right.
So, what about you, Judd?
I think I'm of two minds on this. On one hand, to a certain level, it's like Tyler Durden says, you decide your own level of involvement in Project Mayhem. And I think RPGs are kind of like that. You have to decide how much you're willing to be involved in it and how spotlighted you're willing to be. But on the other hand, there's a point where a player is disconnecting to such a degree that they are, in their disconnectedness, interfering with everyone else's ability to connect. And I think that can be a real problem.
Well, let's talk about the opposite of that, too. What if you have a player at your table who's just so involved and like really going with it that everybody else is kind of left in the dust? How do you, I mean, in one sense you kind of want to, like, I don't want to say reward them, but you have a player who's willing to like take the ball and go with it,
right?
And that's great and that's really helpful. But how do you involve them without kind of letting everybody else fade into the background?
If they're really taking the ball and running with it and they're really being helpful through their play, then they will be helping to put other players in positions where the game will be going to them. If they're just grandstanding and being a spotlight diva, then what the heck? I just don't think we're not here to win Academy Awards. I think we've got to spread this stuff around.
So what if it isn't a matter of them trying to be in the spotlight, just that they have really good goals for their character and they're really into it?
Then I think if other players' spotlight time is suffering, you need to take them and say, listen, I really need your help. As a GM, as a fellow player at the table, I need your help bringing these other players into it, and I need your character's goals to help bring those characters to their goals a little bit.
I think it's a good one to bring out to the whole table,
Yeah.
and say to everybody, how can we get everybody more involved?
And I've done that. I have stopped a game and been like, you know what? We just left this person's character. He's getting left out. He needs a reason to be in this game.
Right.
Let's all talk about a reason for him to get back into this.
I find that comes up more often when you bring a new character into a game.
It's a very touchy time.
Yeah, somebody's character dies and they need to bring in a new one.
Right.
They're not as well connected to the story and what's going on, so
Right.
it's...
And there's that weird fictional hazing that goes on where the players are like, do we trust you? Or are we going to let you in the party if it's a party-based game?
Or it could go the other way, like in the gamers,
Right. They just trust him.
I notice you have no wizard.
Yes.
Exactly.
I think that there's a fine line, and you'll find it for your group. How do you involve more passive players while not discouraging the more inclined? I think getting the more inclined players to help is the first thing to do. Is listen, I need your help. I need you to mentor this. I need your character to mentor this character and help out. And that can be a way to go. Is to team up in the fiction of the game a less inclined player and a more inclined player. Let one person be the other person's sidekick. They might be happy as a bug in a rug to be a sidekick for another player,
right.
and really enjoy that kind of play. So,
and absolutely, don't feel afraid to step away from the table and talk to people, out of game.
Oh, please do. Really, please do. If you feel that a character is slipping away, and talk about it. Talk about a reason to get them into it. If they want to go back home, have a dragon raise their home. And talk about it with them.
Yeah.
If they, you've got all of this fictional power at your disposal. Don't be afraid to use it to make a player more involved.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Blake.
Good question.
Good question. Let's take one of Alexander's wonderful questions from the forum.
Ooh.
He asks about parallel gaming, which is an interesting phrase. When one person at the table is in a slightly different game to everyone else, you can see them from there, you can see them from here, they can see you from there, and nothing actually breaks, but it's weird. What do you do?
Now, let me make sure I understand this one completely.
Yeah.
So this is let's say we're playing a fantasy setting, and one of the players at the table is kind of doing more of a heroic, type of character, and the rest of us are kind of doing evil characters. Is that kind of the...
Maybe. I think...
I'm just not sure I understand this one that much.
So imagine a game... imagine, let's say a science fiction game, and one player wants to play Star Wars, and another player wants to play Firefly.
Right.
And they're playing their roles, they're playing the heck out of their roles, but they're kind of in different universes a little bit,
Right.
And I think that could be a little difficult. I think there are areas where they intersect, and where it would make sense,
Right.
I don't think a Han Solo-ish character and a Mal character would interfere with each other too much. But what happens when you get the one guy who wants to play a hardcore, old school Jedi?
Right.
And you get a bunch of people who just aren't into that. I think you've got to... I think where this is set up is in the game setup. Where this whole thing is set up to happen is when you set up the game. And you talk about the vibe of the game, and you talk about what the game's inspirations are, and you kind of set... And everybody gets together and kind of sets that tone. I think that's a really important part of that whole process.
So a big help for this is kind of talking to everybody about what the setting is.
Yes.
When you come up with it. I think that might be a bit different when you have a player who comes in at the table when it, not at the beginning. So everybody needs to be on the same page is really, I think, the answer to this, and in talking to everybody at your table and making sure that they are. And
the people at the table need to, if it's the GM's responsibility or whoever's responsibility it is, to kind of veto a character idea every once in a while and say, I don't think that's going to work, or you're going to have to alter that drastically. in order for it to fit in what everyone else wants. You can't play a ninja in this Call of Cthulhu game.
Yeah, I've actually in a game that I ran, one of my players, or somebody who doesn't play in my game very often, wanted to come by and play, and I talked to all my players, and they were cool with it. And he wanted to play a character that just really would not fit with the group,
right?
And he was really feeling it. He loved the character concept, and he was really just hot to play it. But I had to say, look, man, this is
not the time.
Yeah, this character just isn't going to fit.
Yeah,
and it's gonna cause problems. So let's try and figure out something that's gonna get you involved with what's going on at the table right now.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, I hope that does it for you, Alexander. And thank you all very much for writing. We did not get nearly to all of your letters. We get one letter every 2 days at least, at the very incredibly least.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for writing. We appreciate it. We haven't gotten to all of them. If there's an issue that you would like us to touch on, please write us about it at sonsofkryos@yahoo.com. That's sonsofkryos@yahoo.com. And we appreciate your letters.
And we would love to hear from you some more.
And we respond to every single one of them. So,
well, Judd responds to every single one of them.
Yes, the royal we.
The royal we, excellent.
And that is the end of our first scale mail. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
This is Jared Sorensen from Memento Mori Theatrics.
And this is John Wick from the Wicked Dead Brewing Company.
And you're listening to the Sons of Kryos.
Hi, and welcome back. Judd, we're going to talk a little bit about scene framing.
Okay.
Somebody a while ago sent us an email, I believe, or maybe it was on the forum.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but they asked us a little bit about scene framing. So I think it would be a good idea for us to talk about what it is,
right,
and how we use it at our tables.
Right. That's just when when the fictional scene in your game begins and ends. Pretty easy. What characters are there, and that's it. It's like setting up a shot in a movie. What characters are there, and what's the setting.
I think everybody who games uses these.
Oh, you can't.
They just don't know that.
Yeah,
it's called scene framing.
Right. You don't think about it. And the time when I think scene framing comes most into view is when players travel from like one city to another. And different GMs do things different ways. Do you do every day? Checking off the iron rations boxes and making sure that everybody eats and rolling for a random encounter? That's one way to do it. Do you?
Well, that's definitely a scene right there. If you have a group of people traveling,
right,
and you say, "Oh, random encounter,"
or "Oh, we're out of food."
Yeah,
you're out of food. You go to get food, and you're out. Oof. They're gonna have to hustle to do something.
Right, and that is a scene right there.
Absolutely. Also, do you just do the Indiana Jones red line over the map method, where you just say, okay, you go over some hills, and it takes about 3 days, and the farmland is very pretty, and the country folk don't really trust you, and they stay away from you, and
the natives are restless.
The natives are restless, and you hear some wolves howl on the third night, and then you get to the town. And that's a perfectly valid way to do it too. And there are all kinds of ways in between.
Now, would you call that a scene right there?
I don't think it's a scene because the players can't really contribute to it meaningfully.
Right.
I mean, if a player might jump on that and say, "Wait a minute, I want to talk to some of the country folk,"
and then it's a scene.
And then I think it would be a scene.
Right,
and then it's like,
right.
okay, you're on the edge of their farmland. They're in the distance. One of their sons is 200 yards away with a longbow to keep, because he's scared. Go. And then you go. And I think it's just really important to keep track of those kind of things. It's a really important tool. One really vivid scene framing thing that we've done recently is we decided that our next game was going to start 5 years after the game before it.
Right.
Bam, that's important. 5 years in between a game, that's nuts.
I know one of the things that I do at my table, I think you do it at yours too, Judd, is asking players for scenes that they want to see.
Absolutely.
This is a really good way to get player input into your game.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than saying to them, what does your character want to do?
Right.
You can say, well, you as a player, what scenes would you like to see?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that your character... And you don't have to... I think this goes back to kind of like that first-person, third-person thing.
Right.
Whereas the player is going to say, well, I'd really like a scene where my character... bumps into the king on the street and talks with him. Whereas if you were doing that where the player was just in control of the character all the time, that would be really difficult. Well, I'm gonna go down the street. Can I talk to somebody and find out if the king is going to be traveling anywhere?
Right.
And I think it becomes really, really like involved, and
it can become tedious when they
yes.
feel like they can't come talk to you. But on the other hand, sometimes you want to say, well, I've got a scene with the king. A scene with you and the king is coming. Just give me some time. Sometimes you just you want to let them know that it's on its way, and that's all right. And you don't have to. In many games, in some games, the scene framing is very structured, and particularly Primetime Adventures comes to mind, where you go around the table and everybody has a scene. For example, with Burning Wheel, what you just talked about with the king, you could make a circles roll,
right,
to get to kind of call for a scene with an NPC, and that's all. It's very important. Those are basically important scene framing tools.
No, I don't think definitely not all systems have a way of dealing with scenes like that, like in Burning Wheel.
Right.
So some systems, I think it's more of a player want and desire.
Right.
And you also have to be careful, depending upon your system, of whether or not you let the player have it too easy. You know what I mean? Right. Because if let's say a player wants to talk to somebody about making a magic item, you could get in trouble with letting a scene happen too soon, where they just get, I want to talk to the guy who can make me the magic item,
right?
Rather than, and you lose the whole opportunity for an adventure there,
right?
Of saying, all right, you've got to go and like find the stuff to take to this guy to make you a magic item. So
I think it's perfectly valid to say to the player, you know what? You want to go meet the king? You better be sneaking over the walls to go meet him. He's in the garden. You hear that he's in the garden from this time to this time, and there's a stretch of wall. Are you going to sneak over it?
So just because they're asking for scenes doesn't mean that they get them
not necessarily
exactly the way they want them, right?
And it's just kind of a way to open up the dialogue and get them to say what they want. And that doesn't mean you have to be a rap bastard GM either,
right?
And just no. You can't
absolutely not.
You can't talk to the king. You're not high enough level yet. It's good to have that open dialogue,
right?
And some games have it very structured, and some games don't. So just mind your game, and if you're playing a more traditional RPG that doesn't really discuss scene framing in it, it's a good thing to have in your pocket to know what it is and to realize that you use it, even if you haven't named it yet.
I think one of the good things about being aware of scenes is that we talked earlier about taking notes.
Right.
I think at the end of a scene, it gives you kind of just a little bit of a break, gives you an opportunity to just jot down a couple of those things that might have been important during that scene.
Absolutely.
And depending on the system that you're using, I think it's also another really good opportunity to give them cookies, XP rewards, or whatever, because you can kind of right after the fact say, hey, this person did something really cool.
Yep.
And here's something for it.
Absolutely.
Whereas if you don't really pay attention to that, I think you can get lost in it and just completely forget about it. And let's be honest, players, like their cookies, and you've got to. It's a really important aspect of a game, I think.
It is important, and if you are playing, if breaking it down scene by scene can make XP much more manageable in any kind of system.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, absolutely. It's important, and don't. It doesn't have to be the next scene is 5 years later, and oh my goodness, we're doing something crazy. But just knowing that you do this instinctively, and knowing a name for it, and thinking about it critically, and how you use it, will hopefully help you use it in the future.
Walking into the next room can be another scene. It's
yep.
Boy, now that I think about it like that, honestly, boy, it's something that I think you kind of have to get a little bit of experience with to kind of grasp where the scenes start. Sometimes, depending on your game. For example, just like that, walking into the other room can be a completely different scene.
Right.
And if you're not really, I think if you're not really experienced with it, sometimes you can have a bunch of scenes that lump together and not really be aware that they're actually individual scenes.
I remember when I was a much younger GM, one of the big scene framing problems that I would come up with a lot was giving everybody their due time and making sure everybody got proper time at the table. And And scene framing can be a big part of that. A rule of thumb in general at my table is I try to keep a scene going until I get to the conflict at the core of it. And some scenes don't have a conflict, but I like to go to it until until we have a chance to roll the dice.
Right.
And some people have a neat. I think Ron Edwards brought this up, where you wait until everybody has a conflict and then you roll them all at once. And that's kind of neat. And that way, it's all this, okay, you're about to roll your sneak. Wait, we're going to him. Get your die ready. We're gonna roll that sneak when everybody has a conflict to roll, and you roll them all at once, and you tell them each what happened, and it can build drama.
Yeah, I definitely feel it could. I would worry that it would kind of like cause time issues, though. Like where one player stops,
right,
and you're ahead with somebody else, and yeah,
it can get ugly, but it can get cool. It can be a neat thing.
I think with a smaller group that would be much better.
Right.
Getting into bigger groups, I think that could be just an absolute headache. For me, anyways.
No doubt. That tactic was I read about it for Sorcerer. And I wouldn't want to... Sorcerer, I don't really like doing Sorcerer for much more than 3 people.
Right.
So, absolutely, a smaller group is the way to go with that kind of tactic. So, yeah, scene framing, I think that's...
about it covers it, man.
That about covers it.
Yeah.
Does that about cover our show?
That covers our show for today, man.
All right.
That's a good one. We've 16. Wow.
My
I want to thank all of you who have been listening to us.
Yeah.
It's really nice to get all the feedback that we've been getting. People coming on the forums, and it's nice to know that we're putting out something here that people are listening to.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank Julie for being the mistress of and and she lets us know when we're umming and ahhing too much, and
we do it way too much. You guys don't hear it all because I edit some of it out. Some of it. You can't get all of them. No, dude, no.
They're ugly. They're everywhere.
And she also wrote a new song for us in the beginning.
Right.
And it's got the same kind of like beat to it, but it's different enough.
I wouldn't trade it. Wouldn't trade that song for anything.
Yeah.
So that's good.
I really like it. So you'll probably hear it for you've probably heard it on the show before this, because I think that's where I've added it in. But
so I'd like to thank Julie just for supporting us and letting us in her house to record this madness. And thank you very much, everybody, for listening and responding. And yeah, thank you, Jeff, for continuing to do your editing work.
No problem, man. If you guys want to email us, we're going to pimp it again, our email address.
It's sonsofkryos@yahoo.com. That is SONSOFKRYOS@yahoo.com. And we will email you within a few days of getting it.
Great. Thank you for listening.
Thanks.